So there was a giant election in Brazil yesterday. The presidential race was a guy named Jair Bolsonaro, who's a far-right candidate, versus Fernando Haddad. And this guy is from the Workers' Party, but my understanding of the situation is that he's relatively centrist. And Bolsonaro ended up winning with 55% of the vote. So people are comparing this guy to Donald Trump, but Glenn Greenwald, who knows Brazilian politics better than anybody else in the U.S., certainly better than any people in the mainstream of the U.S. who would compare Bolsonaro to Trump, he's saying, no, he's not really like Trump. He's a lot more like Rodrigo Duterte of the Philippines, and perhaps even worse than Rodrigo Duterte. So for those of you who don't know, Rodrigo Duterte in the Philippines is doing a genocide against drug users. That's not like that's literal. Like, I don't even hesitate for a split second to say that word there, because he's openly called. He said, kill them in the street, kill them where you see them. I'm green-lighting the cops to kill them. I would want their families to kill people in their own family that are, drug users. But it might be too hard for them, so we'll just have the cops do it. The guy's nuts. And also, by the way, there have been articles about how he's addicted to fentanyl, which might be one of the strongest drugs on the fucking planet. So as he's taking drugs, he's like, let's assassinate drug users. Just an outright authoritarian dictator menace this guy is. And again, Bolsonaro, this guy, might even be a little bit worse. So I have to give you a little bit of the backstory as to what happened in Brazil before we can get into this election. So there was a president in Brazil by the name of Lula. And this guy was, probably the best way to describe him is kind of a down-the-line social democrat. Moderately left-wing in the sense that he really did implement policies that lifted many people out of poverty. At the same time he lifted people out of poverty, though, it's been pointed out that the rich were still doing exceptionally well in Brazil. But the ruling class and capital, they despise social democrats. They just do. I mean, look at how Bernie Sanders is treated. Even though Bernie Sanders is not, in any serious sense of the word, a radical, they look at him and they despise him. Same thing happened with Lula in Brazil. So they mucked up these bullshit corruption charges against Lula and they locked him up. Then they implemented a politician to be like an interim president, and this politician is the most disliked politician in Brazilian history, which is insane. So then we had the election, and it almost sounds very similar to what happened in 2016 in the U.S., where you had like a very centrist, not inspiring candidate versus a far-right candidate. And the results were absolutely disastrous, and Bolsonaro won. So I've already seen tweets of Lula would have won. Hashtag Lula would have won, in the same way that we had Bernie would have won. Because obviously, all of the relevant data shows that Bernie Sanders had a gigantic lead on Donald Trump, way more than Hillary Clinton's lead on Donald Trump. So there's already these comparisons being made. And by the way, Lula is still locked up over these mucked up anti-corruption charges. So that's the groundwork, okay? And it goes to a point we've made over and over. The only way you can beat the fake populists on the right is with real populists on the left. Well, let me give you more about Jair Bolsonaro's record so you can see just how disastrous he is. I'm going to use his own words here. This was a great article in The Intercept. They laid out quotes he's had from the 1990s and on. He's been a politician in Brazil for a long time now, and he's on the record about the things he actually believes. Listen to this. Here's one of his quotes. "The big problem in Brazil is that the government is at the jugular of businessmen. The worker will have to decide less rights and employment or all the rights and unemployment." So he is an absolute crusader of a privatizer. Okay, he believes in, unregulated, unfettered capitalism. An interesting fact about that, the Wall Street Journal endorsed this guy. So big money broke in the fascist direction. Big money prefers fascism, and I'm about to show you how that's literal. Big money prefers fascism to social democracy, which is why, when you have, say, Bernie Sanders versus Donald Trump, watch what happens to all those so-called Democratic billionaires and which way they break. The overwhelming majority of them would break to Trump and against Bernie Sanders. Big money prefers fascism to social democracy. Okay, now we're just getting started here. This is his economic philosophy. He wants to privatize everything. And, the Amazon rainforest, for example, now they're looking to, basically take a hatchet to the Amazon rainforest for big business and let them exploit the Amazon rainforest. Devastating. Okay. If I become president, Bolsonaro says, there won't be any money for NGOs, non-governmental organizations. These worthless people will have to work. If I get there, as far as I'm concerned, every citizen will have a firearm in their home. You will not have a centimeter demarcated for indigenous reserves. So, hey, native people, fuck them. Let's have a gun in every home and no money for non-governmental organizations. So again, this speaks to he's a hardline capitalist. He wants to axe social programs. Beyond Brazil, above all, since we are a Christian country, God above everyone. It is not this little story of a secular state. It is a Christian state. And if a minority is against it, then move. Let's make a Brazil for the majorities. Minorities have to bow to the majorities. The law must exist to defend the majorities. Majorities must fit in, or simply disappear. So he's also a believer in theocracy. Hey, listen, Christian country, God above everyone. Forget secularism, God above everyone. It's a Christian state. And we should have the tyranny of the majority take away the rights of the minority. More. He says, I would not employ a woman with the same salary of a man, but there are many women who are competent. Openly admitting, I would never pay any woman the same salary as a man. To which I would ask him, what if they're producing equal amounts? Quote, I would not employ a woman with the same salary of a man. All right, let me give you more. I would be incapable of loving a homosexual child. I'm not going to act like a hypocrite here. I'd rather have my son die in an accident than show up with some mustachioed guy. For me, he would have died. If your son starts acting a little gay, hit him with some leather and he'll change his behavior. That's one of endless anti-gay quotes. He is a diehard and proud homophobe. It's going to keep getting worse. I got more. Quote, torture works. I'm in favor of torture. You know that. And the people are in favor as well. Got a healthy Dick Cheney streak in him. Quote, through the vote, you will not change anything in this country. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. It will only change, unfortunately, when one day we start a civil war here and do the work that the military regime did not do, alluding to a dictatorship in the past in Brazil. Killing some 30,000, starting with FHC, who was then President Fernando Henrique Cardoso, not kicking them out, killing. If some innocent people are going to die, fine. In any war, innocents die. He's on the record as saying, vote's not going to change anything, I'm not for voting. Let's start a civil war and kill 30,000 people. Let's kill my political enemies. And don't even just kick them out, kill them. And if some innocent people die, whatever, it's fine. That's what a war is. He's advocating civil war and killing 30,000 of his fellow countrymen because they disagree with him politically. An interviewer asked him, if you were the president of the Republic today, would you close the National Congress? He responds, there's no doubt about it. I'd do a coup on the same day. The Congress, doesn't work. And I'm sure at least 90% of the population would throw a party, would applaud, because it does not work. Congress today is good for nothing, brother. It just votes for what the president wants. If he is the person who decides, who rules, who trumps the Congress, then let's have a coup quickly and go straight to dictatorship. Which leads me to my last quote. He once said, "I am in favor of a dictatorship, a regime of exception." He's an open fascist. That's what he is. That's what he is. And it's amazing watching mainstream media tiptoe around that. They would rather, I'm not kidding, I've seen more headlines that call him a populist than a fascist. How the fuck is this populist? Well, in the minds of mainstream media, oh, it's his tone. You know, hey, Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump have a similar tone in that they sound angry, so they're populist. The fuck is that? Talk about laundering right-wing ideology and trying to equate it to social democracy. And what did I tell you? The Wall Street Journal endorsed this guy. So, big money breaks in favor of fascism over social democracy. They didn't give a fuck that he's on the record saying, kill 30,000 of my political opponents, I'm in favor of torture, isn't dictatorship great, I love dictatorship, gay people aren't people, they're terrible, and I would kill my son if he was gay, and I would never accept that in any situation. It's insane what we're watching happen right now. And what's bothering me to no end is that the establishment center is so ill-equipped to deal with it. Because they bring a butter knife to a gunfight. Again, the only way you defeat fascists, the only way you defeat the fake populists on the right is with the populist left. And they actively kneecap the populist left and hold up the right as preferable, as better. This guy is as extreme as it gets. And he's being treated like just any other politician. We need to have a serious conversation about strategy to curtail the rise of the far right. Because listen, I got news for you guys. What do you think led to this? What do you think led to this? Now, establishment, neoliberal corporatist types which have you believe that whenever a bad leader is elected, it's just simply because people are bad, full stop. So vote for us because we're the good people and we're against the bad people. Oh, how fucking genius are you? What an inspiring message. No, the reality is when the establishment, when the status quo has screwed over regular people for so long, they're going to throw a brick through your window. They're going to blow up the establishment and want to start from scratch. This is what we're seeing in Brazil with Bolsonaro. You know, this is what we're seeing with Brexit. This is what we saw with Donald Trump. Now, that's not to say that, oh my God, that's the proper solution. But it is to say that when people feel like business as usual is not working for them and it's hurting them, they will go to extreme answers. And I said it once, I probably said it 8 times already in this segment. The only way to beat the fake populists on the right is with the real populists on the left. But they keep trying to force feed us centrist garbage candidates. Again, that's why everybody's saying hashtag Lula would have won. Lula was overwhelmingly popular. Locked up on mucked up corruption charges. And by the way, this is a lesson to the left. You got to learn to circle the wagons when it's time to circle the wagons. You have to learn it, man. You have to do that. Because if you don't do that, they will co-opt the things that you care about against you. So people on the left care deeply about corruption. I know because I'm one of them. You know, I support Wolfpack, the 28th Amendment to get money out of politics. I support, you know, ending the revolving door and kicking the lobbyists out of Washington. I'm as anti-corruption as it gets. It's one of the main features of my political ideology. But what they're going to do is take the non-corrupt people and accuse them of corruption. We've already seen it. They've already tried it with Bernie Sanders. Remember with oh my God, his wife and a college and something happened at the college where they did something corrupt. Are you fucking kidding me? You take somebody who is literally the least corrupt politician in America and you try to muck up a corruption scandal against him. Why? It's the oldest trick in the book. Accuse them of what you're guilty of. The guy who they installed to replace Lula had a way bigger corruption scandal than Lula. It was mucked up charges. So understand, this is what they're going to do. They're going to come at the populist left with every single thing that they've got, and they're going to try to turn you against your own. The left has to learn to unite, to actually fight, and win. That's the only way we're going to win. They're going to try to divide and conquer us. They're going to do projection in order to try to defeat us and accuse us of what they're guilty of. But we have to unite. That's the only way that we win. And unfortunately, it's far too easy to split up the left. So I'm telling you, I'm warning you in advance, get ready, because those are the charges. That's one of the first things that they're going to do. And whether it's fucking Tulsi Gabbard or Bernie Sanders or Ro Khanna or any of us are going to go, they're the corrupt ones. What? The people who are taking no corporate PAC money and who are running on populist left policies that help the people, they're the corrupt ones. And look at who's going to be making the charges. It's going to be neoliberal Democrat establishment types, or it's going to be, Orrin Hatch, far-right lunatic Republican types. So I just need you to know what's coming, because this is the playbook that they used against Lula in Brazil, and it worked. So here we are. The rise of the far right is still happening. And we may have just lost Brazil to literal fascism and dictatorship. So we need organization on the left now more than ever. And we need to be unapologetic. And we need to fight for what we believe in. And we need to build a movement based on real populism, left populism, based on giving people health care and education and paid vacation time by law and unions and better wages and the freedom to use drugs. This philosophy, there's a non-philosophy in the center. Hey, status quo is great, keep it as is, I'm going to serve business. That's a non-philosophy. A non-philosophy cannot beat a philosophy. And the far right, love them or hate them, they have a philosophy. So let's combat that with the proper philosophy. The agenda that I just laid out, because that's the only way that we defeat these absolute monsters.